Hi guys, my name is Sylvia, and I'm the biggest French woman in the vicinity of the small town of Annecy. One day my butt did a great thing, though it only happened once. That's what my story is about. My big butt always embarrassed everyone in the family. My parents kept quiet about it, but I saw their indignation when the dressmaker came to sew my dresses and pants to order and charged a decent sum for it because there was a large consumption of material. My mother always wondered why I was shaped like this. The rest of the house was as thin as chips, especially my sister Michelle. Oh, even after having 2 kids, her butt didn't get any bigger, just her breast sagged. Michelle threw poisonous phrases at me because she had to save money on something because of my dressmaker services. But was it my fault that I had such a butt? And is it my fault that she divorced a scoundrel husband and now lives on our necks? My butt was growing along with me, only twice as fast. It was cute at first, but then it got to about 3 times my size. Now I was walking around with a trailer. Honestly, it's not easy for me either. There are difficulties, inaccessibility of some services. For example, at school, I have to ask for 2 chairs to sit down on. Just the same at the cafe, or I sit on sofas, but I have to sit alone. In the house, I have a special custom-made seat in my toilet, and I have problems when I go to the toilet outside the house. Same at school. Because of my butt, I can't sit down properly because I can't see a damn thing. A couple of times I even missed. Good thing no one was around. In the car that my sister and I drive, I also have a special seat. My seat is wider than the regular driver's seat, and it's too wide for my sister. It's not safe because when she buckles her seatbelt, she rolls around in it like a pea. I don't fit in her seat, and when I or she take the car, we have to change seats first. My father does it and swears in Spanish every time. He even learned Spanish swear words on purpose. So what? I told you, just buy me a separate car. I usually say at these moments, and Dad speaks in Spanish again. Only my beloved nephews, Pierre and Alan, adore me wholeheartedly. Pierre just loves to run his little feet up to my butt, and Alan lays down there to sleep instead of on a pillow. Otherwise, I was not fat. It was just the way nature arranged it. Do you think I'm getting a lot of guys with this butt? Well, I would say so. The guys who want to touch it. A lot, but to be in a relationship, I have not yet met anyone. For that reason, Michelle and I spent a lot of time together. Usually, we'd take the kids and go out on the weekends. It was a good time, but there were some bad days. Like this one. Michelle ran into the room and started crying. I asked her what was wrong, and she said her ex-husband had taken the kids away for the weekend and now wasn't picking up his phone. "He wants to take them away from me again!" she screamed. My parents weren't home, and I said we'd go to him ourselves. On the way, in the car, I asked if she had taken the children's papers from him. My sister told me that he promised to give them to her every day, but he wouldn't. "Crap, Michelle! When are you going to grow up? He's not going to give them to you." "But how? They're in his house and they won't let me in." "By trickery." In my head, I had a plan. Surely, if he doesn't want to give you the kids, and it's not the first time, they're out of town somewhere. Maybe in their country house? We can check. Do you know the home telephone number? I calmed down and called, introduced myself as a delivery service, and heard Pierre and Alan's voices in the background. Then my ex-brother-in-law said I had made a mistake. I apologized and hung up. Okay, they're there, so no one's home, and we're going there to look for the documents. We were there 30 minutes later. The front door couldn't be opened, there was an alarm. Then Michelle said there was a kitchen window in the house that wasn't connected to the alarm. We ran around and I pushed my sister up and she climbed in. As I held her, she opened the window, and I felt a strange sensation behind me. "Hey, Michelle?" "What?" "Did he have a dog before? I hadn't noticed." "No, she wasn't with me." I lowered my head and noticed the dog in front of me. He was staring at my butt in fascination. "Hurry up!" I tossed my sister up and she climbed in. I slowly talked to the dog while I climbed up the wall myself. Then my sister threw the food away through the window. The dog ran away, but it finished quickly and climbed over the window towards us and stuck my butt. "Oh no, shit!" I yelled. Michelle was pulling on my arms. I was already in pain. I could see through the glass that the dog was running toward us again, and he was looking at my buns. "Pull!" I yelled at the very last moment. Michelle pulled so sharply that I reached inside, collapsed on the countertop with a crash, and it broke under my weight. "Shit!" my sister yelled. "What do I have such an asshole sister for?" I stood up and told her to be thankful that I was helping her in the first place. I asked, "How are we going to get out?" But Michelle said that the dog had sleeping pills in the sausage that she found in the kitchen. We broke into a room and started looking for papers. We couldn't find them anywhere. And then she remembered that her husband kept all the documents in a special little box. "I found it!" I shouted, but there was no key to it. "Shit, take it with you," I said, but my sister stopped me. "There's his ID in here too. If he finds out, he'll find out anyway. After all, the children's papers are here too. What difference will it make if we take them away?" "You're right, let's get out of here." But it wasn't like that. As we left the room, we heard a door opening. "Someone's coming," I said in a whisper, and Michelle pointed to the bed. She hid between the wall and the closet, and I reached under the bed. But my butt failed me again. I couldn't squeeze in, and I froze. I could feel the bed pressing against my buttocks, but I had no choice. Pierre and Alan ran into the room and started jumping on the bed, while my ex-brother-in-law sat in a chair and talked on his phone.
"Yes, I have the children's papers. I want to take away Michelle's parental rights. I know it's illegal, but I've already bribed judges and hired lawyers. Yes, will you do it?" "All right, I'll be there tomorrow," he said.
"Daddy, Daddy, our bed's wobbling." The kids were jumping and the bed was springing on my butt. It hurt so bad that I could barely contain myself. My brother-in-law told the kids to run to the kitchen for dinner, and Pierre yelled, "Oh, Daddy, someone broke the countertop!" Oh no. He knew right away there was someone in the house. He escorted the children out into the yard and started checking the furniture. When he got to the bed, I almost died of fright. Just then, my sister came out. "It's me," she said to cover me. "Fool," I said to myself. They started arguing and I had the box. My brother-in-law yelled that he would report her to the police for breaking and entering, and Michelle yelled at him for taking the kids. He said the situation would only play into his hands now. Michelle slapped him and he slapped her back. She fell to the floor in tears and looked at me, signaling with her eyes to stay down. My sister tried to take him into the other room, but he swung again. Then I grabbed his legs and dragged him down. He fell and I jumped up, knocking over the bed with my butt. He had a mega surprised look on his face, and Michelle stood there at a loss, and I told him to shut up and hand over the papers himself.
"I'll put you in jail. You're both going to rot there, okay?"
I turned on the phone camera footage showing him talking on the phone, where he admitted to bribing judges and illegally depriving Michelle of her rights as a mother. "Let's see which one of us is still going to rot in jail," I said, and he dropped to his knees. He pleaded with me not to go to the police. He pulled out the keys himself and handed over the documents from the box. But among the rest of the documents, I noticed some other interesting papers. At the moment the children ran in, and while my brother-in-law was distracted, I took out a piece of paper and hid it in a safe place. We drove away from there. My sister cheered, thanking me. But on the way, I asked about the house. It turned out that the house her father-in-law had before his death bequeathed it to his grandchildren. That is, Pierre and Alan. Michelle said that she didn't have a will in her hands and it was not proven. I started picking my butt. "Ew, there are children here." "Here, it's the paperwork. There's a house in the children's name. You can kick your useless ex-husband out of there. You should have married his father instead." My sister didn't let me finish. She was crying and hugging me. I was driving and I told her to thank me at home. Anyway, my ass is the hero.
Hi everyone, my name is Eleanor. People still call me Elia. Elia Tits. Yes, if you don't know, tits are breasts. Nature rewarded me with 2 melons in full. And before you get jealous, tell me how cool and beautiful it is, I'll tell you about the pros and cons of such an award. Well, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and write your opinion in the comments. Please support me. So, my whole childhood was like everyone else's. I played, met children, and everything was fine until I was 10 years old. At this stage, girls began the so-called growing up. It was a terrible period because my caring mother would not let me rest. She examined me every day and observed the changes in my body, and I was so uncomfortable, and I really wanted to be left alone, but it didn't happen. My favorite items in my wardrobe were t-shirts and sweatshirts. I just loved wearing them because you could eat as much as you wanted in them and you still couldn't see your stomach. Well, once my mother and I were going to go to some holiday. It was a wedding, I think. My mom bought me a nice white t-shirt with a small net and something else. "Mom, what is this?" I asked her, and she was like, "This is a bra. You are now grown up, and so you need to wear it. You can take them off at night and only walk with it during the day," she said. I picked it up, my first bra in my life, and realized that it was uncomfortable. Rejecting the idea of trying it on, I put on a t-shirt and said I would go like this. My mother did not contradict me. We quickly gathered and went to the event. I went there in a good mood because I just loved to look at the brides. They looked just magical. I sat down at the table and realized that the kid sitting across from me was staring at me. At first, I didn't know where he was looking, but then I looked closer and noticed that he was looking at my breasts. I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the full-length mirror. Only then did I notice that my chest was sticking out and more, well, you know what. It was a nightmare. I felt ashamed and embarrassed. I went to my mother and told her about the situation. She smiled and said, "I brought you something to wear. You have grown breasts, and there is nothing wrong with that. A woman without breasts, like without arms, all girls have them." Then the music started playing, and I wanted to dance so much. I just loved dancing. But when I went out on the dance floor and made a couple of rhythmic movements, I realized that they were bothering me, and that kid was still staring at me. I immediately sat down at the table and sat hunched over all evening. I didn't want to get up and be looked at all. Of course, the adults didn't see it, but that boy, he really confused me. Running home in the evening, I took a shower and picked up the bra. Somehow I put it on myself and looked in the mirror. My mother came into the room at that moment and said that it fits perfectly. I didn't understand what that means. How can breasts look great at all? My mother said that this device holds the chest when walking and running, and then we are not hurt or uncomfortable. I wore it to school the next day and still didn't tell anyone about it. I didn't want to discuss my body with the girls, but they still saw it when we changed in the locker room. I began to hide it, and then it turned out that 8 of my classmates already wear such things. This calmed me down. And then the nightmare started. My breasts were growing non-stop. After a couple of months, my mother bought me a bra in a bigger size, and then another and another. When I returned to school after the summer holidays, my classmates were totally freaking out. They didn't see me, they saw my breasts. And even the big white t-shirts couldn't hide them. At the first lesson, when I sat down at my desk, I realized that my breasts did not fit there. I sat down closer, but I squeezed them hard. It caused pain, and then I had to put them on the table. You won't believe it, but I closed half of my notebook. I was still sitting on the first desk in front of the teacher, and when the historian came to us, said hello, and sat down in his seat, he just paused for a minute and looked at me. Can you imagine how awkward it was? All the kids in the class noticed his reaction and just started laughing out loud. Their laughter finally distracted the teacher, and he blushed, then asked me to move back. I was ready to sink through the ground. But then something even worse happened. We had gym class. For your information, I'm a pretty good dancer. Yes, it's true. And I have great flexibility. And I was determined to get into a cheerleading group because it offered huge advantages for high school students to go to college. Who doesn't need a scholarship to study? Everyone. But for this, you need to be active and persistent. So cheerleading is the best thing. I was put on the girls' team because of the plastic surgery, and our captain didn't hide the fact that my gorgeous breasts would have an effect. Well, for the sake of such a case, I agreed, but I didn't think that I would need to wear a certain uniform. I was given a short skirt and a crop top and invited to a rehearsal. As soon as I entered the hall, our boys started whistling, calling me Elya Tits and clapping their hands. Damn, I wanted to get out of there, but I set a clear goal and went with it. So I took all my will and started dancing. Our boys were often distracted from the game, watching my breasts jump. Sometimes they threw the ball in my direction and asked me to pick it up. I was maddened by the humiliation. Training turned into a nightmare, and I came home in a bad mood. My mother immediately noticed the tears and sat down to talk to me. I told her everything, and then my mother got up and led me to the bedroom. She showed me a photo when she was young, and I couldn't believe it was her. My mother had the same breasts as me. They were huge. My mother laughed a lot when she told me about them. I asked her how she coped with them, and my mother said that it was also awkward and difficult for her, but then she just accepted herself like this. By the way, your dad married me because of them, and you won't believe it, but everyone was jealous of him. It is now they are smaller and not as elastic and beautiful as yours, but women's breasts are very beautiful, she told me. My mother took another bra out of the closet, but it was open work black with wide straps, and she gave it to me. I also said that it would be much more comfortable for me, and it also made me feel different, more feminine. And you know, she was right. As soon as I tried it on, I saw a different side of myself and realized that I was beautiful. My participation in cheerleading will only get better. I straightened up and smiled at myself. The very next day, I came to school in new underwear and a beautiful blouse. I began to be perceived differently, as a lady, and not as a kid in sweatshirts. Now, all the training sessions I gathered an audience of boys from my class and others, and I felt like a queen. I realized that I should be proud of such a natural part of myself. Do you think it's beautiful or not?